So on behalf of Koshala Literature Festival, let me welcome all of you. Thank you so much for being part of a session where I am personally invested. Those two are not only great authors, great advocates, but also my seniors from the fraternity. It is nothing less than an honor, privilege, and pleasure to be sitting right next to you both. And let us see something very enthralling, because we've heard you before through different channels. We've written books, we've talked about it, we've debated, we've fought for the rights of people in the court and outside. Let's show Lucknow the Jugalbandi that all three of us bring on the stage from Delhi. Adab to both of you. Loving the look, Saurabh sir, by the way. It's just shooting straight to the point, and I think you're chivalrous enough to let the lady start, and then I'll switch to you, and I'll try to balance.
I'll let you start because A, you're the interlocutor, B, Malavika is far more charming than I am, but chivalry is another name for patriarchy, so I'll let that pass.
No need? Okay, so should
now
I
please
switch?
do start with Malavika because she is more interesting and entertaining than I am. That I will defer to.
All right. So, staying in the same workplace, you've really broken the glass ceiling. You've not been stereotypical. You've called spade a spade. Every time when you were representing someone, and there were instances when you fought for yourself as well, as a lawyer, as a woman, as an individual. Where do you see someone as a woman where law itself is a field where they say, you know what, it's a nasty field, not meant for females, especially when things are so nasty? Why don't you just say, pick up the safer side, the civil side of it? Don't get into litigation, don't get into the criminal side of it. It's a nasty thing, it's a fabrication between the police and rest of the authorities involved. How difficult for you was the journey to make a mark for yourself?
And I don't think I actually made choices to tell you. Things happen organically.
Might be not.
Can we switch it on?
This.
Thank you. So, when I joined the bar in '85, corporate as an option was not even there. I did work with Shroffs, in fact, which became such a big corporate firm later. But even there, they were more focused on litigation at that point of time, with bank work and so on. And then it's not about the aesthetic of it, but it was also what was exciting. So the exciting is certainly where there are stories. And perhaps now that I realize that I also was at some point going to be an author, it appealed to me. So I eventually started moving more into family law. I've not done that much criminal law, but in my early years, as you yourself were mentioning earlier, as a first-generation lawyer, I've done
All
the whole
sides
thing.
of
Yeah,
cases.
whatever paid the bills, whatever work came, one did.
And to eventually, carve your niche.
Eventually, the work comes
Poured
to
in.
you of a particular type, and I started enjoying it very much.
Great. I think that is quite a lesson that the young people, especially first generation lawyers, can pick it up from your experiences. Over to you, sir. What has been the journey from a student here and then abroad, and then a lawyer who's so bold to break all the convictions of the society, and then being an author ultimately? How was the journey for you?
Well, this journey is taking precisely 52 years because that's how old I am. And as to whether I've shattered any expectations of society or not, that's for society to judge. I've had a very privileged upbringing. I'm not a first-generation lawyer than like either of the two of you are. So a lot of the battles that you people have fought have come a lot easier for me. I come from a family of lawyers. My father was Chief Justice of India. I'm the fifth generation of lawyer, so I'm exactly the antithesis of a first-generation lawyer. But while that weight of privilege is now increasingly albatross around some necks, I find that if you are true to your conscience and if you have privilege and you come from a place where you have had so much, it is the only way you can. I can't disown my family, right? But the way I can atone from the sins of coming from wealth, class, caste, privilege is to ensure that not only do I not abuse that, but B, I fight for people who do not have that. I use that privilege to ensure that others who do not have that privilege will not need that extra leg up in the years to come. But you asked me a simpler question than the one I've chosen to answer. And the question was, what has my journey been? Well, my journey was, I read physics in university. I wanted to be a physicist. It's far more fun. Every young child wants to go to the moon and be Neil Armstrong. That's what I wanted to do. But you can't really earn very much money being Neil Armstrong in India. So I did law instead. I did my law in England. Then I started my practice in the Delhi High Court. Then I moved to the UN in Geneva, where I worked for a few years. Then I came back, started working in the Supreme Court. And in all of this, I was somewhere grappling with my sexuality and coming to terms with myself. I think the variety of life experiences I had along the way made it easier because I realized that not everything was not in that monochromatic, unidimensional life that a lot of lawyers choose to live. A lot of people live in lives, right? They always have this one goal, one aim, and just down that path. I trod a path less trodden. I walked a path less trodden. So that made it easier for me. Maybe that's what it is. But
you also called spade a spade, and you were very open about your choices, talking about preferences. In your book, you discuss preferences in quite a detail as one of the aspect of equality, whereby do you think India as a society can move beyond the tolerance to true acceptance of diverse and preferences, and be it sexuality or career or lifestyle? Do you think we can go above and beyond it ever?
Well, look, it's a deeply ancient society, and along with that deeply ancient society, we're like any society, an unequal society. It has historically been caste in India, which has been the stratifying within the Hindu community at least. Then, of course, there are religious disputes. In a country of 1.4 billion people, there are bound to be differences, right? And equality is one thing which disinventizes the person at the top of the social ladder from allowing equality to foster, right? Unlike freedom, see, everyone can have freedom. And it does not take anyone else's freedom away if I also have freedom. So my right to free speech does not really necessarily impinge on other people's right to free speech. Equality is peculiar. Equality requires you to give up your right. So if I'm sitting at the top of the social ladder as a rich man who's Brahmin, who comes from whatever other structures of society that are most empowered, if I want to ensure equality to others and have a truly diverse India, that means I will have to give up my privilege. So I have no incentive to give up my wealth, my class, my caste, my power. So either we have some kind of forcible system to ensure that the people who are privileged and therefore in positions of power don't get to take the right and to take a decision about how to have this right to equality. And in India, at least, we have chosen to do that through the way of using the constitution. That's when it was enacted in 1950. That is what it promised. But a constitution alone does not change society, right? That is, while a very hallowed, beautiful document, which is flashed about these days, often in election season, not otherwise. But if you want to change society, we have to recognize that those who are most empowered are least likely to change. And those are the ones we need to have change happen. So while I'm not saying that equality will never happen, the fight for equality is going to be continuous, hard, and difficult. And to think that you will just legislate it into existence, not going to happen.
I mean, talking about representation, like you said, when it comes to that segment of the society where already you are much privileged, as you may accept, and they always prefer to give you that onus somewhere to bring the change. Now, as a first open gay advocate of the country, do you feel a sense of responsibility to represent LGBTQIA plus community, and how does it influence your writing, advocacy, or probably the way of living?
But first, I'm
Fearlessly.
not the first openly gay lawyer. There have been many before me. I've stood on the shoulders of giants. But I am, yes, in this age of media, social media, whatever else, the first queer lawyer, gay male lawyer who's become a senior advocate, who's the media has taken a shine to and the world
Because
has
they
taken
could build a narrative around you where rest of the others could not,
Well, whatever.
build it so far.
I live in a freer India than they did. I live in 2024. They may have lived in 1984. India wasn't kind to queer people then. India wasn't kind to women then. India 40 years today is better than India 40 years ago. So, but that's what it is. And as I said, my privilege has required me to act in a way which undermines it. I was just talking a bit earlier about how those who have positions of power are reluctant to give up their power so as to empower the least disempowered. I mean, I use that word power several times, but that's what it is, right? Power, equality. So I am one of those people with that position. So I feel, therefore, it's necessary for me to speak up. So if I become the role model, and then so be it. It's not pressure. If I wanted to, I could just tomorrow decide, all right, I'll do regular commercial law and earn lots of money, or retire, or do whatever else I want to. This is a conscious decision that I have taken. And it is, in effect, to speak for those who do not have the podium, to speak for those who do not have the stage, but ultimately to speak for all of us as society. Because all of us have the same dreams, ambitions, and ways of being. We just manifest it in different ways. So I don't see it as any imposition of having to be a role model. People choose to make you a role model, that's up to them. I will do the right thing.
That's quite modest of you, sir. And picking up from what you said, India was brutal to women then, India is brutal to women now. Over to you, ma'am. Back when you, became the part of the bar, and now there were certain changes. There was no prevention of sexual harassment law back then, anti-sexual harassment law back then. It's just 11 years old. It only happened after the horrific Nirbhaya case that happened. Unfortunately, as per the National Crime Bureau report, there is only a rise in number of rape cases happening. What happened? Where did the litigation, where did the legislation go wrong? How is it that after having so many concerns, a legit code, defining the law, and so many deterrent options taken up by the corporates, we have not been able to contain this particular crime?
Right. So I'll answer your question, but there's a thought in my mind in response to what you said, Saurabh, that equality meaning to is the one right which to bring people with you means, or to be equal to means a loss of something of those and I agree. But perhaps it's a thought where or that's my approach to it, is that it's not a aspirational thing that has to be shared and divided as a pie. And therefore, perhaps our aspiration, if that is different, it need not necessarily be to be the wealthiest, to have the, it's not be competitive in that way. But if you look at it as a self-realization of opportunity to demonstrate your talent to the fullest. So that's opportunity and access, which of course I realize is also relatively, it's a matter of privilege. I mean, you want to be a musician, traditionally it would be only in the wealthier homes that it was fine, that you could take but opportunity of self-expression where everybody need not want to necessarily be in a competitive profession like the law or a doctor or something and so on. So maybe that could get diluted somewhat if our end goal or definition of end goal of what do we mean when we talk equality, which you have addressed in your book.
I mean, just respond to
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
Interesting. Sorry, we just starting our own conversation.
Which is what we wanted. This is the real conversation.
You know, you're right, Malavika. This is what reminds me, we go back and shows how human beings really haven't changed over the centuries. This is very much an Aristotelian virtue-based ethics system. When the man's writing in 2000 BC, 4,000 years ago, talking about how an ideal person should lead a particular life, and all morality is grounded in living the virtuous life. Virtue includes a sense of self-control, value in friendship, and that is, of course,
Balance.
So if you want to live a virtuous life, which also means a life which is not just expropriatory and grabbing.
Yes.
In that kind of a context, you may have equality which comes naturally. But from there, we go from the normative to the descriptive.
Yeah, I agree. But also then, now I've lost that thread. But I think what I meant was that rather than competitive for limited resources, the end goal of success, once it's redefined, therefore it's dignity of a labor as well. Now that doesn't mean, for example, that it's a justification of a caste system that you have to have, that's what you're supposed to do. But whatever it is that you're supposed to do, if there is fulfillment in that, then not to be judged as a loser. So a great problem in society today is the the non-achiever or the lesser achiever being equal to a loser.
Actually, absolutely. I believe equality is effectively about inequality. Actually, because what does equality mean? It means that two unequal people must not be judged differently simply for being different.
Yes.
Right. So therefore, you treat people unequally because treating them equally when they are themselves unequal would be unfair.
You treat people differently, but there is no inequality necessarily in the difference.
Yes, the state is blind
to
whether you are upper caste or lower caste does not necessarily, however, mean, of course.
Yeah, and then you're not. So there is dignity in. So
yes.
If you use a nature. Rather, because if you use society, that in itself, at the way we formed it, is so unnatural, frankly. But if you look at nature as an analogy, then there's a space for the earthworm as there is for the oak tree.
Excellently put.
So it's really about fulfillment of what it is that you're supposed to be. That I was just thinking that when you were, and therefore, if we have that, then it need not be a competition for resources. However, the way we are growing, yes, we are going that.
I think I'll pick it up exactly from there. Yes, after you, please.
Someone wisely said, inequality is relevant only in a condition of scarce resources. It is when you have the pie which is not growing, that's when a discussion of equality is most manifest.
Yes.
If everyone can get whatever they want to, we have to have equal access to air, right? Because there's enough for all of us.
There is no conflict left, actually.
There isn't. It's when, however, there are 3 jobs. Yes. When there are 3 jobs and 10 aspirants.
Can somebody take care of the mic outside, please?
Yeah. You're right. Or even with air, now with water. Clean water being a problem, etc.
They're saying probably the World War III is going to be based on water conflict.
Sort of, emerging like that. Yeah, it was. I just wanted to.
Thank you. I think that's the great equation that I was really looking forward to. It becomes so seamless when two people of the right mindset and frequency come together and we built up something like this. So, reiterating the kind of biases that we come in.
So, to answer your question, Somya, so posh is not a reaction to Nirbhaya. Nirbhaya was too extreme. I mean, that gets led to the Verma Commission and changes in law and on what rape and the definition of rape and so on. Now, we are over legislated, it is true. I don't know whether they have increased in numbers, and I don't know the stats,
They have.
but certainly, okay,
Unfortunately
yeah.
so.
But we also know that any society, that's my belief, when it's at a moment of pivot of an important change, and in this case, it's the woman coming into her own, is when the reactionary bit will be at its worst. In a traditional patriarchy where there were what Saurabh said, civility is patriarchal, that was the consolation prize that women were supposed to be happy with. So, with the consolation prize of civility, and you kept to your place and so on, now civility is out of the window, and that's fine, you know. But what will come instead is then equality. Civility is patronizing. Now, that element of civility going out, sucked out of society because of the churning, until the new value of equality as a positive settles, I think that transition will have these kind of dreadful reactionary male reactions to women being on the road, watching a movie with a boyfriend, having the daring to have a boyfriend, daring to marry outside the caste or the community. It's because it's happening that the pushback is happening. The backlash is happening simultaneously. So the legislation is there. It's the state trying to respond, I realize, and Parliament can only legislate. But the other deeper changes have to have from conversations that of the sort, for example, of Saurabh, along with like the feminist conversations that carry on, the rights of the LGBTQ and so on. They align together to form a new narrative which contests the traditional patriarchal narrative. So this is inevitable, according to me.
I think that's correct. And I was just talking earlier about how often I use the word power. Rape is obviously not a sexual act.
It's a power. It's a power.
Act of power. So why are we surprised that a country which is so deeply, intensely patriarchal like India, that you will not have manifestations of that power in every form? At one level, it is stopping your daughter from studying a particular course or coming back earlier than your son does. Another level, controlling your wife in a particular manner by controlling her money, even if she's working on a job, you take the money and you then give her the salary. To an extreme, which then comes into violence, which is a rape. You don't have marital rape as a crime in India. This is the mindset within
actually coming to that.
So I'll then avoid speaking about that. But other acts of violence that happen within the marital home every day, beating up your wife, which is, almost seen as okay, thappad maar ke to theek hai.
As a right.
Yeah, we're normalizing violence. We're normalizing violence not only against women, but we're just normalizing violence.
And women becoming the watchdogs of patriarchy कि हमारे यहाँ ऐसा ही होता है. You cannot question because your father-in-law, she will never villainize herself. Whatever she wants to get done in the Indian households, she will not take the blame on herself saying that I don't like it. When she wants to get something done by the daughter-in-law who's been newly married and part of the family, she'll say, please don't wear such clothes. Your father-in-law will not like it. So women becoming the watchdogs of patriarchy and coming from the biases. My question to you again is, where do you see the opposition of patriarchy? If I open this question to the audience here, what do you think is the solution to patriarchy? And I want I want the answer to come from the audience first, and then we will eventually discuss. Yes, please. Understanding of patriarchy. All right. So a solution, should we make it a matriarchy? Can that be a solution? If you understand women, probably that's the solution.
No, now you're leading.
The leading question. What is it?
Exactly.
Thank
I'm
you so much.
glad.
That is the answer we were looking
Somya
out
was
for.
convinced that in the audience people will say yes, matriarchy is the solution, but no, she
Because we have
underestimated
so
you.
many inbuilt biases, and thank you for coming up with the answer that we never expected, and probably the youth is the one taking all on their shoulders trying to bring changes.
Answer is equality.
It's equality. Any extreme cannot be the solution for the other. And talking about one solution to the other, we've managed to decriminalize homosexuality, and we have got a long way to go when it comes to marital rape.
I don't know about long way. It's supposed to be argued any time now. Let's see when it's listed.
And but it has been kept into what they call in the courts a thanda basta for a very long period of time. It took how many odd decades after getting
I know,
the freedom?
but at least the conversation
Shit is happening. That's
Delhi
again
High
is a
Court-
movement.
Delhi High Court did give a split, so there's
Yeah.
no
Yeah, no
ruling
majority to
really.
it.
One judge said one thing, the other judge said another thing, but both judges, by their positions, have demonstrated the parameters and contours of the debate. So, frankly, the conservative contour, to my mind, cannot align with the function of the Constitution, according to me. But let's see what the Supreme Court
Has to say. So we're looking forward towards the judicial activism in a way in which you've covered in your book, Who is Equal. That book is available at the Universal bookstall, and all of you can get your copies. It's very important to understand equality in a very basic manner. It is not coming out from just a lawyer. It is a perspective of a citizen who have achieved and also faced the wraths of inequality. And go read for yourself, and let's see what more he has to talk about. Coming to the judicial activism, sir, do you think that talking or having such PILs or cases in the court is suffice, or we really need a political push and a social intent to really see the changes? Because after decriminalizing 377, we still see the kind of treatment being done to poor people. They don't get to have houses so easily. They don't get to have amenities so easily. It is only off late that a eunuch gets to have his own Aadhaar card, let alone getting other privileges of being the citizen of the society. So while equating it with equality, where do you see judicial activism doing its job, or do we still need a hard push from the society and the intention of the present establishment or many others to come in order to see the change?
Well, the neat answer is that a constitution already prescribes what should happen. Change has to come from parliament and from the executive, right? That's the constitutional scheme of things. The problem is when change does not come from parliament and the executive. I give the example, for instance, of the absence of an anti-discrimination law against, forget members of the queer community or the trans community, but even women. Or religious minorities. Today, a private citizen can discriminate against a Muslim by saying, I'm a Hindu, I'm not going to sell you in my shop because I don't like you. And that's absolutely fine. There's no law prohibiting that. Or not allowing a woman into a particular shop, saying that so this is for men only. We don't like women, you can't come in public spaces. So that is an abdication by Parliament of the responsibility cast upon it. So what happens at that point of time? Either we throw up our hands in despair and say, well, Parliament hasn't done its job, or the executive has not done its job. So these constitutional promises, which are embodied in the directive principles of state policy and the fundamental rights, will just remain a very nice little piece of prose that students will recite in their civics lessons, but not actually be the lived experience of everybody. So at that point, the courts have no option but to enter and fill in the gaps that have been left by Parliament and the executive. The worry is that the Constitution sees everything as a form of a balance. Typically, a decision that is taken will be tested on the anvil of its constitutionality by the courts, and to see whether that is the right thing or the wrong thing. There's a problem if the court itself says, do this. Who then checks whether what the court has done is correct or not? Because it's not that the courts are always right. The court can also get it wrong. So there is inevitably some shift in the balance of power when there is judicial activism. So that, of course, is on the purely legal aspect as to whether there should be judicial activism or not. But I, for one, am of the firm belief that the biggest way the judiciary can make a change is not only by legislating, deciding a particular case one way or the other, but opening up dialogues of conversation to the politically disempowered. Not everyone can stand in Lok Sabha and speak and have their voice heard. We vote every 5 years to vote one particular MP, and that MP will take a view which may or may not align to my view. So there is, even though we vote whenever we can, our democracy is not truly participatory in that sense. Courts then become substitutes for democratic spaces as well. Anyone can go to court and file a petition, and that petition will be heard. Parliament has a luxury not to deal with a particular issue. Courts don't have that luxury. If I file a petition challenging the marital rate exception, the courts have to deal with it. And that gives a citizen in court a voice. So it moves almost into a kind of a democratic process in which these discussions then take place. So judicial activism becomes a form of democratic participation as well. And with that, it filters into the consciousness of society also. We saw recently with the marriage equality hearings that happened. They were streamed through YouTube into various homes. People across India, at least people I know, maybe those from the queer community are more interested, obviously, were seeing these arguments, and every day the Chief Justice was either being accused of being a crazy left-wing loony or rah, we love you kind of a thing. It generated a discussion. And that discussion has laid now the germs of an idea. Even though the marriage equality judgment went a particular way, the court said we will not recognize it, that seed has been planted in the mind, at least of the youth of this country. And once a seed is planted in some place as fertile as the imagination of the young, I think it is only a matter of time before us old trees wither away and those trees germinate and become a reality. So judicial activism is also then a space for planting the possibility and hope for the future. So there are multiple things that happen in a court.
Amazing.
Very nicely.
That's very nicely put, and I think that is the responsibility of youth. But before that, you talked about patriarchy and legislation, and there are multiple questions coming to my mind, and I'll try to cover all of them and taking aspect from both of you. When it is about legislation, we also have seen, you've covered it in detail in your book about the caste system in the country. But there is a catch. A woman of an upper caste married to a person of the lower caste, probably from SE, does not get the privilege of being married to a person of SE. Now, this is the antithesis of patriarchy, where we've been pushing her, adapt the family and the culture and the upbringing, the lifestyle, adapt everything. But when it comes to privileges about getting married to that particular family, you're not given the privilege by the government. Do you think there is a blind spot, or was there a conscious decision made by the think tank? Or how do you see it affecting there are a lot of intersection. They're hitting certain castes, they're hitting certain genders, they're hitting certain section of people who are not getting married with an aim to get privileges. Because a female getting married is a problem, although a male getting married or the children out of such marriage will get such privilege. How do you see that, in the total puzzle?
Well, there are very complicated rules about when upper caste or lower caste man or woman marries someone else. And these rules are not created by a think tank, but by the ultimate think tank called the Supreme Court of India. Right? This is judge-made law. And I think the example, for instance, which is discussed in my book is that of Rohit Vemula, the young Dalit scholar who died by suicide while he was holding a hunger strike in his university, saying that he was being treated on the ground of his caste in a manner which is unfair and unjust. And the first thing the government does is not inquire into the practice of injustices against the people from the Dalit community, but instead start questioning his caste. And because of this loophole in the law, which says that if his mother was an upper caste, then he would then get that caste, even though the father was different. He was therefore declared as a non-Dalit by after a commission of an inquiry is had. Now, what the problem with all of this is that we tend to ignore the social reality of our country. The law cannot be divorced from that what people live every day. It's not a matter for discussion for constitutional experts. The Constitution doesn't belong just to judges and lawyers, right? It belongs to the common citizen. It's a charter how we are all supposed to live.
Onus is on all of us.
Yes, and the moment it starts getting divorced from the reality of India, which is that if a woman gets married into another man's house, it is pretty likely that the child will take the caste of the father because you're living in a particular society. And to say, no, at that point you will not get reservation is peculiar. And it might be the result of one decision that was taken some time ago, which will hopefully be overruled eventually. But the processes of law take their own time. But this is generally symptomatic of that problem that I'm pointing out, which is passing judgments, having legislations, interpreting the Constitution, oblivious to the lived reality of a large number of people. And that is where sometimes something like judicial activism might be problematic. Because of
They take it with a pinch of salt.
Well, you see, the words of the court are final because that is what the Constitution says, and you can't have it any other way. I can't start having the executive saying, well, I think the court's got it wrong, therefore I don't have to follow it.
I don't
And they
want to
tried that in
get my
Sabrimala.
license cancelled by commenting this. So yeah, that fear is definitely.
No, in Sabrimala, that's exactly what happens, right?
What happens.
The Supreme Court says men should be allowed, women should be allowed to go into the Sabrimala temple regardless of the status of menstruation or not. And the courts has said that, but it has not been implemented by the executive. That shows a violation of the rule of law. That means that the Constitution is no longer binding on the government. It binds all the normal people like us. So the idea of rule of law is everyone is equal. It binds the ruler, the ruled, the minion, and the master.
So, Malavika, my question to you would be, I cannot help but ask this question because I've got the opportunity, ma'am. How do you see the triple talaq judgment from the lens of equality? Has it done any good to Muslim wives, or as they say, it has done more wrong because people have now deserted their wives, not given them talaq, not giving them maintenance unless they are chased under a certain rule? How do you see the judgment?
I don't know about the equality aspect because all that it was doing was striking down. It has not stopped triple talaq, but it's the traditional Islamic law which is over 3 months and so on. And all that it stopped was the instant talaq, that in a moment of anger you cannot just say it and so on. So, and that is good law. I mean, that was the effort. Now, whether courts should be looking to personal law and adjudicating, yes, they have been constrained to, because for us and our social fabric is so closely entwined with custom, which is also related to personal law, and some is there is statute with regard to some, there was no statute with regard to the others. So for that to assimilate, and I don't mean have a uniform civil code, but just to assimilate within each cultural context, yes, it was an important move. And yes, it did strike that balance. Now, whether because there's no law which is going to get anybody to behave better and become better people, the struggles will still remain the same. But by the articulation, there is something that has been crystallized, which converts into something which has to be abided by, whether they do it kicking and screaming or go to jail or whatever is something else. But there was no triple talaq, which by striking it down, men were suddenly going to treat their women better. That doesn't happen, right?
Thank you so much for that answer.
Just on the triple talaq point, curiously, while you think it's obvious that triple talaq is a manifestation of inequality, right? A man can give a triple talaq to a woman, but the woman cannot give a triple talaq to the man. That's unequal as it is. Article 14 written on its forehead, so to say. But the court didn't strike it down on that ground. Court didn't say that because a man can give it, but a woman cannot, therefore it is bad in law. They said, no, this is detrimental to the institution of marriage, where in a fit of anger, two people can get divorced. This is arbitrary and irrational, and therefore this is bad in law. And in doing so, I think they completely ignored the sex-based aspect of discrimination.
Yes.
And instead, prioritize the idea of marriage as being this holy thing that should not be shattered in a fit of anger. Now, that's correct. Marriage should not be undone in anger, but that is not the ground to challenge triple talaq. Triple talaq is bad because a man can do it and a woman can't. I'm sorry, but the court did not say that, and therefore it let itself down, and it lost an important opportunity to lay a series of laws where personal laws can be challenged on ground of sex discrimination.
They should be. But having said which, courts in all cases, whether be it the MRE in the Delhi High Court or its reactions from time to time, is always to try and, as you use the word, create the sanctity of the structure, never questioning that the dynamics of the structure itself are patriarchal.
Holier than thou.
And are patriarchal. The woman plays second role.
Inside.
That's right. So you're right. The court didn't, but then it could not have imported the view that the woman should be able to say triple talaq as well, or that it's bad because she can't. Because under Islamic law, unless there is khula, which is part of the nikah nama, she can't ask for divorce in any case. So it couldn't have gone that route, but chooses not to either, because, as you say, leaves that traditional space untouched. But till it remains untouched, gender parity will not be meaningful.
I think another very significant change that we spectated, and we see a lot of disruption in the society in 2019, and you've covered it very beautifully in your book. Walk us through a little bit about the CAA, the Citizenship Act.
I don't know whether I've covered it beautifully in my book or not.
As a lawyer, that's my perspective.
Okay, I've devoted a few paragraphs to it. Well, the CAA, its constitution is still yet to be challenged. It's not been listed. It's been avoided being decided by multiple benches. There is value in saying that there are oppressed Hindus in a large number of countries in our neighborhood. And therefore they need further protection. So when they escape religious persecution and come into India, then they should be given citizenship. But if your basis is sympathy and humanity, and you say that persecuted Hindus must be given citizenship, then your testing ground is not the religion of the person who's being persecuted, but the persecution itself. So, if there's a Rohingya Muslim in Burma who's being persecuted, or there are certain other Islamic sects in Pakistan who are Muslim, maybe who are being persecuted, they come into India, they must also get shelter of our country. We belong to a country with a beautiful tradition of protecting people from other countries who have been persecuted. Most notably the Dalai Lama, who we gave refuge to in our country.
Not a similar case, but Sheikh Hasina, apparently.
Yes, correct. So we give Sheikh Hasina was not a religious persecution.
Yeah, but a similar example. That's what I said. A similar example where she sought help and we didn't mind giving.
Yeah.
So we being the powerful neighbor.
If you're talking Dalai Lama, then prior to that, the
So anybody in
Zoroastrians
minority, the responsibility of the majority or the stronger one is not only to be selective in helping people.
See, when you point out only Hindus as eligible to citizenship, you are doing partly the right thing, but in trying to avoid what you should do, you're sending out a political message, which is the wrong thing. So an act of kindness degenerates into a discrimination, which is futile. I mean, I don't think there will be hordes of Muslims who are going to claim that they're being persecuted in their countries, whom we will have to give citizenship in India. It's not a numbers problem. It is then an optics problem.
Correct.
And if it's an optics problem, I say that maybe okay politically, because that is what politics is played on. It should not be. That's not my politics, but that's fair game in politics. It should have no place in constitutional scheme of things, right? That's the difference between politics and the constitutionalism.
But tell us, talking about religion, religion has harmed as many people, as many lives and families that not even, say, cancer or nukes have done it so far. What equality are we trying to propagate here? And at the same time, when it comes to sexuality or having a preference, criminalizing it, when a person chooses a partner, who is the victim? Who's getting harmed? Why is it criminalized? There is nobody at the end who is being at the receiving end. Two people harmlessly joined to be together. It becomes a threat to the society. But ultimately, if I were to choose anyone who's getting affected by two people deciding together, I cannot pick up a name. How shallow is the setup of a society that gets shaken just because two people made a choice to be together, lovingly so, and at the same time religion? How do you see these
For
two
one,
things?
I would clarify, I for one do not see religion as a cancer.
It has done more loss of life.
No, religion has been very useful for a large number of I come from a family where my mother was extremely religious. It's like a knife. You can use that knife to have an surgery or stab someone. Religion by itself is not a bad thing. It's what you do with it which makes it bad. You gave the analogy of religion and cancer. What is cancer if not uncontrolled growth of a particular kind of a cell? Our bodies grow, they need growth, they need development. Every cell divides. It is only when a particular subset of those cells becomes completely crazy and starts reproducing without being stopped, and the natural bodily processes go awry, that you have a problem like cancer. Religion is the same. Religion is important to us. We belong to a religious country. We've had a deep religious ethos, and without much problem for some time. So I think equating religiosity with prejudice is the problem. So I would not go ever and say that. There are problems in certain aspects of religion, and those I will condemn. Because while I will not condemn everything, it doesn't mean that I will condemn nothing. So there is always nuance, and that sometimes gets lost. And that's when you give the example of sexuality, and that I'll show you exactly how religion is not the problem or is equally the problem. So when this Section 377 case was being argued in 2018, the government of India said, all right, we are not going to say anything about decriminalization. But members of every religious organization, the Christians, the Hindus, the Muslims, virtually everybody came, extreme right-wing loonies, not the mainstream people from religions, but the loonies, which exist everywhere in every religion. They came and said, no, you must criminalize them. Now, I would not equate those loonies with the religion. A person espousing a crazy right-wing idea that Hinduism says that you must stone, or Islam says you must stone people because of their same-sex partner, that doesn't reflect religion, right? So I'm not going to condemn religion because of some mad people's view of what they say. But I will condemn their views. That's what Mahatma Gandhi said, right? Condemn the sin, not the sinner. Condemn that view, but not the religion. So, coming back to that point of sexuality, same-sex partner, and its interaction with religion, sometimes you can say that, look, at least in Hinduism, there is ancient literature about where people of alternative sexualities are recognized within Hinduism. But to me, that's kind of irrelevant, because religion is a deeply personal thing and it should stay in the personal domain. It should not make its way out into the public. You're free to live your life as per whichever religion you want to. The question of your sexuality is a matter of a constitutional right. And the court should be governed not by what religion says, but what their oath of office requires them to do, which is to pay their full faith and allegiance to the Constitution of India,
To its citizens.
to its citizens, to the right of equality. So I think we have to segregate church and state when it comes to matters of freedom and equality, and expect the courts then to do that. There is no victim when, as you rightly said, two people of the same sex or gender or two queer people, to use the more generic umbrella term, live together. So religion has no place in that, in the constitutional scheme of things. Individual religions are, of course, going to say things. So in the West, you see, for instance, there is marriage equality, but you will not have two people of the same sex getting married in a church, in a Catholic church. That's fine. You see, in a religious space, you don't accept something, doesn't mean you don't accept it in a secular space.
So I will take some extra time because this session is getting very interesting, and
I know, but
we started a bit late. So yeah, I put my foot down here. But just picking up a thread here, and I don't want to be controversial here, but can't help. Quoting one of our learned colleagues, J. Sai Deepak, who on the Sabrimala judgment said that if I don't bring religion to a place of secularism, which is the court, don't bring secularism in the place of religion. So he was anti-Sabrimala.
I know, but there's no point in going, because that's a never-ending.
That's a never-ending issue,
Yeah.
for sure. But then at the same time,
you are bringing in where religion and certain practices have to align with constitutional values. That's all.
that's all.
That's all. And every religion in every formation, there are parts that don't align, and that's what reform is about. So,
As rightly said, that religion is of one part of the pie, but then when it comes to making personal choices, it's irrespective of any religion. It is about how the constitution makes it for one and all. My question to you would be, ma'am, in the words of Indra Nooyi, as she said, and you have mentioned about intimacy and relationships in your book, Intimacy Undone, and how it affects female. She says women can't have it all.
yeah. In fact, I've quoted her because she in fact even said that she came back from work and her husband was at home, and then her mother-in-law said,
Go get the milk.
buy some bread.
You might be the CEO of PepsiCo. Here you are a family member who has to take care.
I said it as she said it. So I just quoted her to say, this says a lot, which is that you can't have it all. Whereas I do believe that you can. It's just a question of, she chose to play that role in a home, that's up to her. But there are many who won't. And that becomes a different struggle. But that's all.
So we've talked about landmark cases, we've talked about judicial activism, we've talked about religion, we've talked about caste, we've talked about marriages. There are certain questions which were to be brought in an anonymous way. And right after that, I can open the session for the audience here if you have questions, and I'm sure you do. What suggestion or a ray of hope would you like to give, sir, to a boy who is 17-year-old belonging to a C-tier city, who is gay by choice, belongs to a social strata which is much, much lower, not much acceptable, could be an SC or a OBC, and he champions and he looks at Ambedkar as his hero. How do you think, how is India to him? Where is the ray of hope, if at all there is some?
That says chosen the right role model in Ambedkar.
True that.
And the ray of hope is just that, hope. Hope that we've come a long way in the last 75 years. We're in a better space than we were, even though it may not seem like that. Hope in the form that you will yourself have to be the change rather than expecting others to do for it. So that 17-year-old boy, I will say that you have to become that hope. You have to become that change. Don't expect other people to do your dirty work. Fight.
Fight. Like we always do as lawyers. Thank you so much for the session. I mean, that was quite academically very enthralling for me as an individual, as a woman, as a lawyer. Any questions, please? Oh, we've got a good session. Questions? Anybody? Hanji, please. Please stand up, tell your name. Over to you. Yes, please.
If I may. I think it's the media power of courts which has made that somewhat the case. Media power of the courts, media power of certain other judges. It's that it's become this twinkly thing. And often that allows political class to abdicate its responsibilities into taking tough decisions that it needs to by just pushing everything off onto the agenda of the courts and heading back. In the example you gave of the absence of a male rape in the new BNS, I don't think that's politically problematic at all. I think it's just callousness on the part of the political executive, or even though the standing committee in parliament had recommended change, it did not happen. So yes, there is a fear that when you feel that people are getting their rights in any case in court, I don't have to do anything about it. Just kind of engage courts so much also with this kind of form of litigation that the actual task of courts, which is oversight, also doesn't happen. There are multiple reasons. There is danger in it, yes, undoubtedly.
As rightfully said, that judges need to become philosophers, philosopher needs to become judges. Only then there will be a balanced society. Any other questions,
As long as
please?
they don't become lecturers as well.
Oh, there are two. Oh, we see lot many questions. Please pass on the mic. Oh, 3, 4 questions. Okay, great. We'll take it all.
Sir, we had a very delightful sessions, very informative. And my question is, I was just looking for an answer that, as I understand the justice system, it's like reading the laws, delivering justice as per those laws based on the evidences which are in black and white. So my question is, sir, do you really see a possibility of a judge made by AI generated judge in next 2 decades, who would be delivering justice, let's say in cases of Posh, a specialist judge delivering justice within next 2 decades? I mean, is there a possibility? How do you see it?
AI is really taking over our profession, I must say, but then we will beat it for sure. Saurabh.
Well, they can take over the role of judging as long as they don't take over the role of lawyering. I'm safe. Look, in the mundane day-to-day cases, yes, possibly you can have a fair degree of utilization of AI. And that would be a good thing because that will take the pressure off an already backlogged system when you can have AI. But the problem, I think, and the way the AI may not, with its current technology, yet be able to come, is in a couple of things. One is an assessment of oral evidence, right? A lot of evidence which is given is oral evidence. When you look at the demeanor of the person, and you'll say, I believe that person, I don't believe them. Now, AI can't do that because that is something innately, uniquely human. So even with all the AI, we still have these captchas, which AI may not be able to easily capture. But oral evidence is, in any case, something that AI can't possibly do. Second, area where I think AI will not come in would be matters of constitutional importance, where a court is required to understand the sensibilities of the country that they live in and the constitutional values. AI is just something that takes a massive information and processes it and gives an answer. It does not understand values and meanings and precepts as yet. I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of great technology that happens, that develops. Maybe that will happen. In any case, this is a question.
I'd like to supplement what you're saying. There's a difference between law and justice. Law is the rules. The justice is what minimizes the impact of rules and makes them as just as possible. Now, that's a human function. It's a human function of a balance of empathy while balancing the weight of what is just. That's different to the law. AI will know the law, it'll have all the rule books and regulations and what they are in violation of. But there's a penumbra around it which we call equity, which can only be a human factor, according to me.
Human touch is inevitable. That is going to last. Yeah. One more question. Yeah. Check, sure. Please. And that's the last question because sir has a flight to catch. Unless we are up for another session.
I have an observation to share and request your comment on the thing. We're trying to solve all the problems as executive or judiciary level. I believe you can't change grown-up adults. They metamorphose, right? So we are addressing the right, wrong forums. We're trying to solve the problem. We should be solving these problems at the school level when it comes to the education. And that is fundamentally missing here. I'm teaching both the kids in Melbourne, and I've educated here. I see the huge gap. If you address the problem at the bud, whatever the society camouflage, it will be finest society that you will give, rather than getting it at the judiciary executive, because all these are cataloged in a political games, right? And they aren't going to last for long. Your comments on that?
I think it's quite a rhetoric suggestion, sir. We all three unanimously will agree to that. And as far as sex education is concerned, they've started it.
No, I'll say one simple thing, that what you're saying is correct. But there is a difference between an investment in ensuring that a problem does not perpetuate itself to the role that the judiciary does, which is solve the problem here and now. There is a problem here and now. We can't afford to wait for 20 years for that child to grow up who may or may not be empathetic enough to bring about societal change, right? So when you have decriminalization or equality, whatever else for women, that's a problem today. A 30-year-old woman is not going to wait for a 5-year-old child in school to become a 30-year-old person, become a majority, and then bring change about in 25 years. Courts have to have a responsibility today. The better way may be to educate, but courts, I'm sorry, can't wait. Neither can citizens of this country.
Probably the best of both. It's a two-way thing, and the onus is on the society, the changes. हम Indian administrative services करते हैं ना? Yeah, that's everywhere. That's the importance of education. You know what you want to, put and seed it. Indian administrative services होता है हिंदुस्तान में. Indian teacher services कर दीजिए. Best of the teachers will come and educate, and you'll see the change in the society. That's probably the answer. Thank you so much.